So when we talk about water pollution, what it is any undesirable substance which is present in the water and it deteriorates the quality of the water. So let's say we have an industry which is built up close to the region where you have water body. So what would happen? The discharge from this industry would go into the water body. Now when this discharge goes into the water body, what would happen? The proportion of the dissolved oxygen would reduce, but as you move away from the industry, so the water which is very close to the industry would have very less dissolved oxygen, but as we move away from the water which was closer to the industry, the water which is far from the industry, the amount of dissolved oxygen would again increase. But the region close to the water body to the industry, the water close to the industry would have a significantly high amount of biological oxygen demand. Now this is the demand level that you can see would jump up when it is closer to the industry, and this would decline as you move away from the industry. Now this biological oxygen demand is the demand by the organisms in the water close to the industries. What happens? The discharge comes onto the surface of the water. Now this discharge deposits as a surface. Now when this water becomes rich in nutrients, mainly nitrogen, sulfur, what would happen? A growth of algae would increase, and this would lead to algal blooms in this region. Now when you have algal blooms in this region, what would happen? The contact with the oxygen for the organisms in the water would cut, and as a result the plants underwater would start to decay and die. As a result, the fishes which are thriving on those animals would again decay and die. So what happens is, this contact when breaks, this increases the oxygen demand for the organisms which are struggling to get the oxygen in the region where there is algal bloom or higher amount of nutrients. So this is the area where the biological oxygen demand increases. So we say that biological oxygen demand works inversely with dissolved oxygen. So in the area where you see higher biological oxygen demand, in those areas the demand for the dissolved oxygen present would actually reduce, and this is detrimental for the aquatic life. So this is where we need to understand that water pollution, mainly driven by the industries, by the households located close to the water body, have been affecting the life of the aquatic organisms. The next important thing that we study under this is two important factors. One is biomagnification and the other is eutrophication. What is biomagnification? Biomagnification means with each trophic level, we have already talked about trophic levels in our previous class. So here we would understand that with each trophic level, we would have the concept that we would need to understand that with biomagnification, there is increase in the amount of pesticides which are present in the soil, in the water. So what happens? Let's talk about DDT. So DDT, let's say when it is present in water, let's say assume it's 0.003 parts per billion. Now, when it goes on to the phytoplanktons, it becomes 0.04. When it goes to the small fish, it becomes 0.5. To the big fish, let's say it becomes 2. And when this big fish is being eaten by a bird, let's say it becomes 25 parts per million. Now, this amount of DDT when present in the birds is significantly high, and as we mentioned, this is what is called as biomagnification. The amount of the pesticide increases with each trophic level. Now what would be the impact of it? Now this would affect the calcium metabolism. Now when the calcium metabolism in the fishes would be affected, what would be the impact? The impact would be the eggs of the fishes, of the birds. The eggs of the birds would have a very thin shell, and as a result there would be premature death of the chickens, and this would lead to declining population of the birds. We have also seen the same impact of biomagnification recently. In the recent studies we have seen about vulture. So vulture, there has been a significant decline in the population due to the medicine which is known as diclofenac. Now diclofenac is one of the medicines which is given as a painkiller. However, it has been restricted in use but still is being used, and the carcass of the vultures which have been found predominantly in northeast India, it has been witnessed that significantly higher amount of diclofenac has been found in those vultures. And this is again an indicator of biomagnification, because from one hierarchy to another, the organisms that consume that, they increase the amount of that substance in their body, and this is what is known as biomagnification. Related to biomagnification, we also study another term which is known as eutrophication. So what happens in eutrophication? There is a algal bloom and the layer gets covered by the organisms. Now once the layer is being covered by the organisms or the algae, it gets the contact with the surface. So the plants here start to decay because they don't get sufficient oxygen from the air. Since the plant start to die, the fishes start to die, and therefore we call this process as eutrophication. Now this process of eutrophication can occur as a natural process, but naturally it can take thousands of years to progress. But what happens with human activity? With the human activity, this process gets accelerated. Since this process gets accelerated or boomed up, we also call this process as a cultural eutrophication or a accelerated eutrophication. Now in this process, what happens? There is originally the water in the water body is relatively cold, but with the industry, the discharge coming in, this water becomes warm. Now when this water becomes warm, the aquatic life cannot survive in that region and starts to decay and die at a faster pace than it could have been, and this is what is known as accelerated or cultural eutrophication. Now again, since we have talked so much about water pollution, there is one important thing that we need to understand here is what is integrated wastewater management system. So integrated wastewater management system is one of the major concepts which has been done by the Humboldt State University in the regions of Akara. In the regions of Akara in United States, it has been witnessed that the region close to the industries have seen a numerous wastewater going into the systems. So there have been two-step purification system. The first step of the purification is nothing but the conventional process. Now this conventional process includes what? Sedimentation, fluorination and chlorination. So running the chlorine and the fluorine in the water and sedimenting the water, so the water becomes pure at one level. Now this pure water moves into different hectares of land. So there are different segments of land, and here you have various algae, various fungi which are being left into these territories. So what they do is biologically they purify the water. So this process, this conventional process, won't remove any kind of heavy metals from the water, but with the use of these algae and fungi, these heavy metals could actually be removed from the system, and this process runs through what is known as the Friends of Akaran marsh, and the people here work together maintaining the regions and the aquatic system. Even these marshes have now turned into sanctuaries. So there have been various processes through which the process of integrated wastewater management actually works. So this was just one case study that we have discussed. We have numerous such interesting case studies where efforts have been taken to control the impact of water pollution, and the heavy metals being released into the water bodies can be controlled significantly.